So good morning and welcome back to another episode of our Fireside Chat. I'm joined as always by members of our customer advisory board, so feel free to all wave. So I'm joined by Roland, Paul and Dave today, and we have a guest with us today, so Alex Hooper, who joins us from our managed services team at Cisilion. So today we thought we'd continue the theme that we started over the last couple of weeks and months, where we've been talking around really how we develop and change our organisations to deal with digital transformation. So around kind of cost control, optimisation, and of course today is going to focus more on kind of how we streamline services and potentially switch, traditional on-premises support for the role of the MSP. Of course, managed services aren't new. Us at Cisilion, we've been providing managed services for certainly more years than I can remember. You might remember the start, Alex, you're a little bit older than me. But certainly back in the day, before what we now see as the world of cloud computing, the majority of managed services and, still some managed services today were very much built around that kind of break-fix model, very reactive, where, an organisation either paid annually, 3 yearly, whatever, for unlimited or capped levels of support or credits. When something broke, they called a number, logged a ticket. Hardware engineer would walk up, place something, place a switch, fix something, restore it, back it up, whatever. Of course, cloud changed all of that. Again, cloud's not new, but it changed all of those things. And I think as we move into this kind of model of much more of a shared responsibility model with cloud, it certainly changes the role, I think, of both internal IT and, of course, the role of the managed service provider. If we look at today, most organisations, I'd probably go as far to say all of them, use multiple cloud services. I think depending on what stats you read, the average organisation uses 50 to 60 different cloud services, whether they realise it or not. Anything from signature management to CRM to Office 365 and Slack and Salesforce and those kind of things. And of course, because organisations don't just have one cloud, each of these environments are, add to the complication of IT, and it's outside in many cases of the role and the design of IT. You've got different terminologies that are used, you've got different complexities, you've got different identity management systems, governance, security, interoperability, change control, update frequencies, all these kind of things. So cloud is great and creates loads of simplicity and abilities for users, but it can obviously drive more complexity and diverse the control, I guess, around the way that we traditionally manage services. So if we think about today and kind of how we move forward, then part of what I wanted to go through with the team today really was to understand your view of managed services, how you use them, and how you see that landscape evolving. So if I turn to the panel and kind of ask the first question, and feel free to just raise your hand if you want to ask the first question, or I'll pick on somebody. But briefly, just sort of before you speak again, just say who you are. But how do you define what the role of managed services is, and do you currently leverage any today within your organisation? I'll start with Paul. Perfect.
That was good timing, Rob. Yeah, so Paul Clark, I'm Director of Enterprise Services and Security at L&Q. So we use lots of partners, and we have a model that we started talking about 12 months or so ago, which we call our ecosystems of partners concept. And this is looking at how we use external partners to complement our internal teams. And, quite often that's about the skills that we potentially either don't have or we don't need to have in the long run. So if we've got something short-term going on, we may use a partner to help with bringing in the right level of skill, knowledge, or potentially about the capacity that we need to deliver something. So rather than bursting the size of the team, something that isn't necessary in the long run, we'll use the capacity of a partner. And for us, the model solves a few things. So firstly, we want to maintain kind of that internal customer intimacy. So we manage the internal side of the relationship, but the partner works with us to make sure that, whether it's support or delivery, that we're able to do what's necessary. So we own that. We maintain that ownership of the relationship. People don't go to the company directly. Gives us that ability to scale up and scale down on demand. So as someone needs something from us, if we are unable to prioritize it over other things, then we've got the opportunity to pull down that support that we need. And also, you talked about cloud, Rob, and the fact that lots of people leverage multi-cloud. At the moment, we don't. We're kind of in a bit of a hybrid world still. So the on-premise is still a risk, and the cloud stuff is obviously evolving. We're getting to understand a bit more. But the bit that I'm trying to get to is around the kind of business continuity side. So if we've got cloud services and external support that we can gain support of around, how we invoke things like business continuity and reduce the risks around resiliency and stuff, then I think it helps. We have a number of companies that we currently use, and some of them are focused around support, so like network support and hardware support and things like that. And then we've got other companies that we'll use for other things such as delivery. One of the most recent ones you touched on, information security. So one area we're looking at the moment, which we haven't progressed, is around the clock SOC. So looking at providing a level of service to our team around kind of that threat and risk landscape monitoring. So we have a 9-to-5 team, not necessarily strictly 9-to-5, but you know what I mean. But the risks actually are probably bit bigger and greater outside of hours, and that's the area that we need to kind of shore up. So we're looking at how a partner could help us with that, but kind of maintain our control, our ways of doing things, kind of the tooling that we use through Azure Sentinel. So we have this ecosystems with partner approach. So it's not we don't do outsourcing. We want to maintain that control. We want to maintain that ownership. And most importantly for us around the customer is that intimacy side. So we know the customer best and they trust us.
And Paul, can I ask, with that multiple partner piece, how do you achieve that single pane of glass monitoring and knowledge base through mixing those partners together?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's become more and more apparent recently is around vendor management. So we started off with a vendor manager probably 2 or 3 years ago, and she's done a fantastic job actually. But the more and more partners that we're starting to use because of the move to cloud and the fact that one of our principles in our strategy is kind of this ecosystems with partners model, we need to build a better way of managing and interacting with all of these parties. And I don't think we're there yet. This is a journey that we're having. What I would say is that we've got some great people and we've got some great tools, but the bit we need to get to is moving away from having a supplier to having a partner. And we've still got some legacy suppliers, and suppliers are great for some things, but for those big things that are more strategic and long term, we really want to get to the place of partners. But yeah, we're not quite there yet, but we need to put more effort into that certainly that vendor management side, and becoming intimate with our partners as we are with our customer.
Yeah, and how do you track, I suppose, the effectiveness of that partner providing the service? I think what we're seeing is there's definitely a shift from the old school method of SLAs. You fix an incident within a certain amount of time, green tick, but it's not necessarily about that anymore. It's about actually did you fix it? Yes, but did you actually fix it with the right experience? And it's kind of that shift towards what we're calling experience level agreements now. And how do you track that and monitor that with your partners?
Yeah. So it's for us at the moment, it's kind of the tried and tested stuff, right? So it's kind of the regular kind of service reviews, and making sure that we've got relationships through the organisations at the right levels as well. So if something goes wrong and actually a service delivery manager's not responding or not able to pick it up, that we've got the right connections at more senior levels as well. So it's not just reaching out when there's a fire to be fixed, it's having that relationship that you can call on. But I think you may be right about SLAs and KPIs, but I think there's still a need for them. Certainly when we're picking a supplier, one of the things that will go into our requirements is around the SLAs and the KPIs, and I think we're probably a mile away from removing those. What I would say is that most of the suppliers that we have kind of legacy relationships with, let's say, are more focused on kind of response time than they are resolution. And that's often as a customer the most challenging piece, because the supplier, the partner will say, we responded in 15 minutes, half an hour, or whatever it may be, but actually it's taken all day to fix the thing, or it's taken 3 hours to get the right person to even start looking at it. So that's the challenge for us, and I think the more that we leverage partners and MSPs, that's the bit that is concerning, I guess, for me, is making sure that as we lose some of the control, I guess, over our systems, that we've got the right people there and they're responsive for all that we need.
And I think on that effectiveness side, it's a really interesting point that you raise as well, because you're right, everyone publishes that stat about we'll pick up the phone really quickly and we'll answer it. But as we do evolve into more and multiple cloud services, quite often that have an interdependency upon each other, what the MSP does, and of course without the MSP model, what you would do internally as IT is essentially triaging and trying to work out what and where is that root cause, like what is a failure, what has failed, what is not working, and therefore it's kind of whose throat do you choke. And I guess the evolving role of, if I look at some of the managed services that we provide, several years ago, you kind of had to take a step back and go, actually, what, we need to reassess the value we're providing here, because all the services that we are managing, we're operating the services, we're making sure that we're communicating changes and downtimes and those things, but the services that we provide are made up of multiple different cloud products, of which we don't actually have the keys to the boxes. We are as open to those failures as our end customers are. So we are really that role that does that triaging, escalation, troubleshooting, and all of those things behind the scenes. So getting to a fix is a hard thing to put an SLA around, which is why I think that point, Alex, you raised around the experience and the communication and just making sure that you've got someone's back to drive these things forward becomes even more important than just rocking up and replacing a hardware component that's failed.
Yeah, because sometimes the fix isn't in your control, is it, Rob?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If it's a cloud provider, as an MSP, our job is purely it's about making sure that communication stream is effective and people understand what's going on, rather than just that. Well, I haven't been called. I don't know when I'm going to get a resolution.
Yeah, David, Roland, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think from David Maskell with Thatcham Research, from my point of view, I can just almost echo exactly what Paul's going through in his scenarios. I think at Thatcham Research for many years we did everything ourselves. We tried to, if we needed a software solution, we'd almost develop it ourselves. But we've realised that that's not the most effective way to use our resources in-house. So we are leveraging more and more service providers and building up those partnership relationships. I think for me, it is all around that relationship. I know, we've talked around SLAs, and I agree. An SLA that you responded in 10 minutes, 1 hour, whatever is okay. But for me, it's having that good communication channel with the account manager on the other side, where you can have an honest conversation when need be. And sometimes things aren't going to go to an SLA. They aren't going to go expected, as you say. Sometimes it's outside the managed service provider's control. But I think if you're communicating and having that good partnership, then when the rough times happen, you'll be better placed to manage that. And then I think that makes for a much better business to business relationship. I think without that, we would all really struggle.
Roland, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we're the smallest organisation here with kind of less than 100 users. That means that our in-house IT team is actually less than 2 FTEs. It's one full-time person and a bit of a couple of others, one of which is me. And so inherently we are reliant on service providers. And that means in particular, the two biggest things I would say are expertise on particular topics that we go out for. So for example, we've always had a relationship with Cisilion in relation to our phone systems and Teams and the way that we rolled that out from the point initially of actually getting the devices and having the consultation about actually what could Teams do at that point and those sorts of things, through to much more recent things in that sort of space. And then the second one is provision of kind of out of hours care and things like that. So, we have a global business where we need to support people in Hong Kong and in the US, as well as those in the UK and Europe. So it's easy enough to do the UK and Europe ones, but I'm not going to ask our IT manager to answer the phone 24/7. He would probably quit very quickly if I did. So absolutely, we partner with people to provide some of that. Now, whether that is a genuine managed service relationship or not, I'm not sure I could honestly say. I know that we've had some conversations with various people, and Cisilion are one of the people that we've spoken to about that. We actually still have a relationship with a previous provider that we've continued to use there for that service, which is partly based on value and things, but also they fundamentally do most of what we need most of the time, and it's a trust-based relationship. We know the people there, they know us. And it's worked quite well. But I think we do use a few different providers, but we try to keep the number as small as possible. So I think if we were to be dealing with 10 suppliers on a regular basis, that would be quite hard work, where essentially we mostly deal with 2 suppliers for most of our IT needs. And then occasionally that stuff gets outsourced. So there's 1 or 2 topics that we've come to one of our providers on, and they've said, well, you know what, we're not experts in that particular thing, but we know some people who are, so we'll get them in, we'll manage that relationship. And I think it is the fact that we are able to use Cisilion and our other providers to help us manage those second degree relationships, to really bring in particular deep expertise in 1 or 2 topics where they might not have it themselves, and we certainly don't have it, but we've got access to it, and the provision of some management service over the top. And that's what we find works well for us.
Which I think, as you say, really built on that trust perspective of, particularly if you're going to trust your partner to recommend and bring people they trust in to provide that service. So it's that multi-tier, and that's certainly something that we see a lot of now. And in many cases, some of the big projects that we get involved in where we do managed services, some of the vendor selections that our customers want us to onboard and support aren't vendors or technologies that we typically support either. So the customer wants and requires that overarching managed service, and they want that one throat to choke and that one person to deal with everything. But almost below that waterline, it can feel like chaos sometimes, particularly where it's technology that we can support. So we have to go and do that, and obviously we then need to have that multi-level trust, which is, as you say, is why it's you're right. That relationship and trust and experience is absolutely key. If we think about looking forward, so we talked about kind of what we've got today, and part of the reason I enjoy these panels is because we learn a lot from these as well as hopefully our listeners. But if you think about how technology is evolving and the pace of innovation within technology, I mean, if you only have to look at yourselves internally as probably how much digital transformation you've done since the start of COVID to probably what you've done in the previous 5 or 6 years. It's just not slowing down. It's crazy. I always sort of say to myself, maybe I should have got a job as an electrician. There's not a lot that changes day to day in the world of power, but certainly the world of IT is just crazy. We've got more IT cloud services coming on board. There's the rise of low code, no code development internally, where your own IT team or your own department leads now are creating apps and services to drive business transformation. Where do you see the future role of an MSP? So if you kind of look forward to how your business is evolving, how do you think your business needs are changing, and what do managed service providers like us need to do to continue to stay relevant for you? So I'll go back to you, Paul, or just might as well go back on the same loop.
Yeah, excuse me. That's fine. Yeah. So I touched on a few bits at the start, right? So I think they are an extension to our team, and they need to. For us, I think part of our selection of managed service providers, or partners, as we would like to call them, is around having some shared values and obviously being in the journey together for both for kind of equal reward, I guess. So there's a reason for us to be working together, which is kind of a shared outcome. We also are looking at selecting partners based on some of the corporate social responsibility ethos of the organisations as well. So we have a large foundation that supports communities and local areas that we work in. And actually, what we found real good success with as well is we can support our partners and suppliers to deliver some of their own responsibilities in those areas through our foundation. So that's been really good. So it's not just about SLAs and cost for us anymore. It's pretty much every procurement we do has got some social responsibility and values led piece. But yeah, I think for us, it's as I said earlier, it's about us maintaining and owning what we do and having the skills where we can. Our teams are understanding of our journey. The technology trends aren't stopping, right? Cloud is here, and people need to develop and follow that path. But at the same time, the suppliers that we can utilize. So, for example, when we were standing up our Azure instances, we leveraged some suppliers to help us around the governance to make sure we didn't have any false starts around that. So things like cost control were really important, and some of the approvals and the automation that we're starting to use. Yes, we can probably do some of it ourselves, but how do we know we've got it right? And then it's awkward to fix later. So yeah, we use partners for, as I said, the kind of skills issues, the specialist knowledge where we've got scarce roles, and just to give us that that's kind of tick of assurance, I guess, to make sure we're following the right path.
Yeah, and I think that echoes what we're seeing from the demands of our customers, what they're asking for, and more and more of the service offering is shifted into that almost that life cycle management, product advisory piece. And sometimes, as we spoke right at the start, sometimes as an MSP, we're not in control of the resolution, we're not in control of patching. The service is provided as an evergreen service, so we need to show value into doing more for our customers around that life cycle piece. Around we know that if we look at Microsoft services, they're releasing new features and product updates constantly, and it's understanding where they're coming and how they can help the customers that are using those products. So we've certainly shifted that a lot of our time that our service engineers spend looking at how we help our customers to continue that advancement and getting the best out of their technology.
Well, you're right, Alex. Yeah, I mean, and with a couple of our customers, it's created a completely new, completely new and complete, shift of actually the service we provide. So, we've got a customer that we've always provided managed voice services and support services around those things. In fact, they last year took that away and said, look, to be honest, it's all in the cloud. We've got pretty smart people. We'll just kind of manage it. If it goes down, there's not much anyone can do about it. But what we actually need is services that help drive adoption and change management within the organization, so that we've got people talking to end users about, the new things that are coming, how they can actually leverage, better, smarter meetings. What are these new things, breakout rooms, or whatever it is, the new fad that's kind of coming out, because their IT team don't have time to, they're not trainers. They don't have the time to actually drive that messaging, but actually they need to know about them as well, because their users are ringing them up about, supporting issues, or how do I do this? And they don't even know that technology exists. So it's a really interesting full circle of where we're seeing, or certainly starting to see, a complete change in the ask from us, in it being kind of reactive. Something doesn't work, to actually, let's make sure we understand and can use the full extent of those services, which I think then goes back to what we were talking about in one of the earlier episodes, around, getting the best out of the products and optimization and usage, and the fact that, half the organizations don't necessarily know, what the products can do and what's there. So without driving that kind of awareness, then, you're actually encouraging more shadow IT or more, the procurement of more IT services that actually you don't need, because if people knew how to use the products they already had, they might not need those services. So you kind of go into a bit of a full circle around those things. So yeah, totally, Alex. Something we see quite a lot.
So one thought that triggers is we're in the middle of replacing our CRM system at the moment, and we made a conscious decision to go with the one which is easiest for our end users to use. And there was a little bit more to it than that, but it fundamentally boils down to that ease of use, even though it is less fully featured than some of the alternatives. And part of the rationale from some conversations we have with other clients who use it at the moment is that it massively reduced their load of internal IT support type queries, because people were just able to do it. It was intuitive and obvious, and there was a good online help facility and kind of online chat to people direct from the vendor for questions. And they said, one of the other clients we spoke to about this said, yeah, we could pretty much have got rid of someone in our IT team, and actually we've been able to move them over onto more value add activities. And that's something that we're hoping to achieve as well, is that, as I said, we've got a very limited internal team. So if I can have them spending their time doing more value add activities, we'd rather do that, even though we recognize that it means that actually in certain aspects we are downgrading our CRM system capability, because we currently have Bullhorn, which is very flexible, very configurable, but is also a pain in the backside for a lot of day-to-day activities. So we're losing some of that configurability and flexibility in exchange for something that is just easier for our staff to use. And that's the trade-off we've made, but we think it's a good one. I mean, I'll report back to you in a year or so's time. But we think it's a good one, and we think that overall benefit is really going to be worth having.
I think it also shows that shift now, doesn't it, into the power of the power of the user, if you like, the influence of the user. Whereas it was always, IT did something and gave a service to the users that a bunch of people decided was right. And actually, I think you're right. Users now are so, obviously they're important. Of course they are. That's why you've all got jobs. But their view and their ability to adopt and use technology is so important. There's so much choice out there, and of course, cloud computing makes stuff just people just go and buy stuff. I mean, even we're 150 people size organization, but we find products that people are using just because they've struggled to get the platforms they already use to do what they want, and they haven't been trained on them. They don't know how to use them, and they've watched a YouTube video or someone's contacted them through LinkedIn and they've done a trial, and before you know it, they're using these things for task management or whatever it might be, even though those native products are built into everything they use, but no one's shown them. And so it is it's something we're watching quite carefully, and certainly looking at what I see other managed service providers offering. And obviously, Alex, you look at this closely, but it's certainly a different trend that 5 years ago no one was talking about that stuff. It was always about tickets and response times and those things. Dave, any other thoughts on kind of the evolving roles? We're talking about obviously the evolving role of the MSP. You looking forward, what services do you need, or how do you see that role changing of the partner?
Well, I think it's I take your point earlier around Microsoft and AWS and all the other cloud providers adding services. Things that, particularly in my role, I'm very interested in is obviously security features and all those compliance modules that come on board. And my team just haven't got the time or the bandwidth to be able to, research each one of those individual configuration settings, features that have been released every single month. And we've leveraged Cisilion a number of times in the last couple of years to do that for us. And I think that approach has been really beneficial. I think it's perhaps, as you say, different to traditional managed service relationships where your guys can really help. They're in the systems, they know that, they can use that expertise and extend the technical skill set they have on board at Thatcham. So I think that is incredibly powerful, and the same with Teams. So you worked with us on a project to roll out Teams on the education side. I think lots of people knew what Teams was in the corporate world, but didn't know what it could do in an education world. And that training and awareness aspect from that managed service that we did with you guys really helped to onboard that project. So I think things are definitely different. I think going forward, I think for certainly on Thatcham's side, we're just going to be leveraging more of this. I think with expansion, further diverse technologies, technology moving at such a rapid rate, we have to embrace this. We have to leverage the MSPs in the right areas of the business. And for me, we started this approach many years ago. And in fact, I was part of the change when we went from on-prem Exchange servers to BPOS and then M365. We're early adopters of that. But lots of people were very nervous about changes like that, but it was for the right reasons, and it avoided us being awake at night trying to defrag databases and stuff like that. So it was a massive move forward. And I think, I don't know if it was Roland or Paul mentioned earlier, for us, one of the big ones is that security operations. I think my team are never going to be able to be on the call 24/7. And as you say, the attacks will happen when we're not there. And that for me is a particular area of growth that I think will be heavily focused on and looking at in the future.
And it'd be good to focus on. I think you've all mentioned that one actually. So I had a bunch of other areas to talk about, but I think let's hone in on that one a little bit. I think for the last sort of 10-15 minutes, security is, as you say, right? I mean, it's more complicated for all the reasons we talked about above. There's multiple clouds, there's multiple different governances. The products are changing. Combined with obviously the increased threats of state nation attacks that we've got probably now more than ever, and also of course COVID. The fact that the world has changed forever for many of us. Most organizations have got if anything people are working from home a lot all the time, partly when they want to, so that those boundaries of security continue to change. It's also, of course, security, I find, a bit like any service and organization. There's also resistance, I guess, as well within a business. If you've got people that work for you that are kind of your security team today, and we're talking about, I think all of you have mentioned that kind of either need to or looking towards that kind of managed SOC approach, either as to take it all off or to supplement kind of what you've got today. Do you see a lot of resistance, or do you see there being a lot of resistance from your internal teams that do that role today? And how do you overcome that, I guess?
From my point of view, I think there will be resistance. It's natural, I think, for people to feel that resistance and that fear of the unknown, really, about what it brings. But every one of those projects we've brought in the past is leveraged benefits to the organisation, and actually the team members have benefited from that knowledge and working with these partners on these projects, and their roles have evolved and changed over time. And take back the exchange, people that were managing exchange servers, some of those are still with the organisation today, and they are now doing other roles, other activities, giving value back to Thatcham in different ways. So I think for me, it's always around using the people in the most effective way, and actually paying the experts for security operations might be the way to go. They're likely to have a lot more knowledge and experience than we will have, and that allow my team to focus on the areas where they can add the most value.
We've certainly seen that. Building out an internal SOC capability comes with a price tag, which is often too much for a small business. So I think there's a definite tipping point in terms of size and getting that capability internally within your organization.
I think it's also about recognizing that just because you might have someone looking after your, doing all your threat hunting for you and looking at those common things, and they should know your organization, know your sector, know the threats, know what to look for, that doesn't negate the need for the organization, unless you're going to completely outsource the security function. You've still got to have your head around security. You've still got to have, you still got to be advising users what to do if they get, if stuff gets through the filters, they get weird phishing attacks. How do they report it? How do you train the users to be aware and smart around those kind of things? And designing services and onboarding new products, and ensuring that that security governance is yours. And I think there is still, quite a lot of the time we speak to organizations all the time that are looking at these kind of things, and they sometimes forget those things, right? They think they go straight to the answer of, that's gonna be great, I've got somebody, it's like that big insurance policy, or while I'm there I'll take out cyber security insurance, but you still forget actually that the posture and awareness and just some of the real basic things, MFA, etc., being so critical to keeping you safe. And I think that's
within our team. So we invested in creating our own SOC about 3.5-4 years ago, with lots of infrastructure people doing a great job, but it's obviously become a bigger thing than just being part of someone's job. It has to be their job. And I think the unpredictable nature of the last 12 months. So I think, off the top of my head, we've had Microsoft Exchange vulnerabilities, we've had SolarWinds, we've had Log4j before Christmas, and just the ability to react to all of this stuff, plus also do the day job when it comes to other threats that are out there, running the governance and some of the compliance stuff we need to do. My team are fully aware that they need support, and I think that as long as they are part of the ownership of those relationships, I think they're in a good space with that. They're driving how we do things. They're driving, why we take certain actions. So, we've established the SOC, we've chosen the tools ourselves, and if we get a partner to help us with that, then it'll just be an extension to the team rather than it taking over anything in particular. I think with security professionals, they're also used to having partners come in to do things like regular pen testing on new systems or annual reviews. A lot of organisations have been through things like Cyber Essentials, and part of the readiness for that is quite often you'll get partners in to assist with things you should be focusing on. We're at the moment talking about doing the out of hours SOC type approach with a partner, but also looking at doing some sort of retainer relationship with a partner. So, if we need some incident response support, that we potentially have that available to us, so we can leverage it. I don't think we'll be vastly growing the team. I think it will just be about leveraging other partners, and probably multiple partners as well. I think in the security space, it's important to have more than one partner that you rely on.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the role of your SOC provider, is to kind of keep those things honest and look for those vulnerabilities, and then you've kind of got your multiple security partners in the right place to help you plug those holes, because obviously the SOC isn't going to do necessarily all of those things for you. So we're almost out of time, and it's been really useful actually. I think I've certainly learned some things, and Alex, I'm sure you picked up some nuggets as we continue to evolve and evaluate our managed services. But if I was to ask you all kind of your looking ahead to the future, your three asks of that future MSP that you may or may not use in the future, what would they be? What do they need to be demonstrating to offer value to you? Paul, start with you.
Yeah, we've probably mentioned a couple of things already, but I think the important things for me are around trust. So they need to be there to work with you closely to gain that trust, so that they do become a partner for the long term, and it's not just about short-term arrangements. I think there's a piece about having a focus on the journey that the organization is on. So it's not just about a point in time delivery around a solution or a service. It's actually, what is this organization, what is my organization trying to do over the next 3 to 5 years as part of our strategy, and helping us to understand how they can support that. And then I guess the last piece is, if we're talking to security companies or MSPs, they should be helping us understand some of the trends and what's coming in the future, so that we can be reacting early rather than late, particularly around security, which is changing all the time. Tech's changing all the time, but I think security and the risk side is, it's ever in the news, isn't it? I think
when everyone's buying everyone, aren't they, as well? It's one of the biggest. Collaboration was the big acquisition space a couple of years ago, and now it's security. Everyone wants to be the biggest security company in the world, and I think we touched on this before, but it's kind of, you've got this big push towards best of suite versus best of individual product set, and I think with that we're going to continue to see huge amounts of acquisitions as more organizations try and simplify and have to Alex's point earlier about having that single pane of glass, and that's quite hard to do with hundreds of different security products that all overlap with each other as well. So I think we'll continue to see the vendor's approach to try and simplify security through acquisition and suite stuff. Yeah, good point. Thanks, Paul. Roland?
Yeah, I mean, I think I broadly speaking agree with those points. I think the most important thing is the relationship with the provider and whether you feel you can trust them to be doing the right thing. And I think that larger organizations may have more of an SLA or moving to an experience level agreement. And for smaller organizations like us, it's based more on personal trust and evidence of having done the right thing in the past and being confident that that's going to continue to happen in future.
Number 3.
Damn
for number 3.
I think the other piece has to be continuing to show value, and therefore being able to be in a position where not only do I end up confident that we're going to deliver a good experience to our users, but also that I can justify to our board that the amount of money we're spending on that service is appropriate and sensible.
Yeah. Good point. And
I think this is very unfair that I come last.
I know,
it means that I'm crossing off all the ones that have been used. Yeah, obviously trusted partner. I think that is the one we've all said first, and I think that is absolutely the key one. For me, that's really around having discussions and meetings. It shouldn't be a transactional relationship. It can't be a transactional relationship. Certainly for it to be a good partnership. Measuring value, Roland just picked that one up, and I think, yeah, absolutely, it's definitely there. I think we'll all be pressed in our roles to demonstrate value for the money that we spend, and I think that's inevitable that the more service providers we use, the more questions will come if you use multiple service providers. For security, you might want to do that for various reasons, but yeah, quite rightly be challenged on that one. And the last one, which I don't think we've covered yet, with flexibility. I think the partners need to be very flexible. They need to adapt with the need of the businesses and changing landscape. I think that's essential to being able to keep evolving as that relationship continues.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm going to flip the tables just for the last 3 minutes while we've got Alex on the call. So Alex looks after our managed service portfolio and propositions. Have any of you got any questions you'd like to ask us as an MSP about what we see as challenges or things that we're doing, or even to give us any any advice, I guess, as prospective buyers of any of those services?
What are the kind of top 3 things people are reaching out to Cisilion for help on? So you must get lots of companies reaching out for your support. You must be responding to lots of tenders. What are the kind of top 3 things that people need your support with?
Okay. So certainly the one right at the top of that pile is that single pane of glass. I think all, certainly historically, organizations have had different parts of their IT services being monitored or managed or supported by different systems, different organizations, and it's I think there's a huge demand to try to get that single pane of glass, that correlation of events, and actually monitor IT that on a business service level. So actually we can address the impact. Take the old school world of a switch going down that's got one user on who comes in on a Tuesday afternoon probably doesn't need to have the SLA or the importance of a switch that's hosting your back end SQL servers or whatever they may be. So it's actually understanding the impact of certain elements of going down within your network and how that affects business services. So I think there's definitely a strive for that consolidation of information and visibility. I think on a second point, I think there's and we've mentioned it previously. SOC-based services I think are very relevant at the moment. And I think all organizations are potentially realizing they don't have the bandwidth or the skill set to do that themselves, and certainly want assistance on that. And then the final point is, and you all mentioned it in your responses to Rob's question, was, how can we add value to their internal team? I think that's a real key trend. It's not about our ability to respond and resolve an incident, or because that should be a given. It's really much about how can we add value to your organization and make sure you're getting the best return on investment of the solutions that you've bought. So it's that continual proactivity advisory piece. And ultimately, with my salesperson's hat on, if we don't add value, you're not going to renew when that contract comes up. So it's it's something that Cisilion we're striving to do all the time, because we know it shows benefit to your service and makes a salesperson's job easier as well.
And Alex, just to pick up on the question you asked as well, which I think you echo a lot of those points. If you look at the kind of services we're being asked to provide, so you touched on SOC, but what other ones would you say you're seeing a lot at the moment through tenders and through the sales team? So managed security, but what other trends are you seeing?
I think certainly the managed voice services, collaboration services. I think we've certainly seen a shift into that from your traditional on-prem voice services into whatever the solution you choose from Teams or WebEx, the management of that service, where we see a lot of requirements for that. I think the traditional enterprise networks are still there. I think there still needs to be that. I think, and also I think as MSPs we try to do everything remotely, but we've also got to recognise there will be requirements for on-site presence as well. So certainly for a lot of our global clients, it's the ability to provide that feet on street, smart hands, engineering resource when required at the remote offices. As much as we want to do everything remotely, that engineering presence is still important as part of the service.
Yeah, I think we see that. We've seen that a lot, haven't we, recently, Alex, with things like managed meeting rooms, which is something that we see coming through tenders a lot, where it's great having everything remote and you can detect where the cameras are unplugged and those things. But actually, when a boardroom stops working or a meeting room stops working, particularly if it's a location that doesn't have IT presence within it, or it's difficult to get to, you need someone to turn up and replace that component or reboot the room or check or hold someone's hand and make sure that actually it is working but the TV screen's not on, or any of those kind of crazy things that still happen. Fantastic. So I think we're just about out of time. If anyone's got any other questions, if not, thank you very much as always, panel, for your insights and thoughts. I certainly found them useful. I hope everyone listening did. Anyone that missed this will be playing it back on all the normal social media channels. Thank you, and join you on the next show. Thanks very much.
Lovely. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.